Welcome viewers to another exciting episode of Canadian Mosaic as part of Awaz Entertainment. I'm your new favorite host, Prashanth Madhi, and I'm excited for this episode as we'll be divulging into a very important topic that will talk about our planet and why it's so important to think about climate change. So tonight, our episode will focus on giving our viewers an awareness on climate change and discuss the imminent threats and the future. I have the pleasure of speaking to Larry Wickett, who is a Canadian environmental consultant, ecologist, and an individual that truly cares about saving the earth. Please join me in welcoming Larry Wickett from Toronto, Canada to Awaz Entertainment. Welcome, Larry. We are excited to have you as part of the show.
Thank you for asking me. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's begin this interview by sharing with our viewers on why is it so important for us to really step back and think about the imminent threat that we have in front of us and the future of planet Earth.
Well, you know, despite any other issue that we deal with on the planet, and we're dealing with a lot of them, we have to have a planet to deal with them on. We have to have this planet. Fantasies of going to Mars is very, very nice and exciting for an interesting topic, but we're a long way from living there. This is the planet we have, and we have to look after it so we continue to have it, and our grandchildren will have it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, I mean, how come you're so passionate about this? So, I understand that you're in the environmental field. So, what made you get into this field, and what's the reason behind why you're so passionate about this topic?
Well, being an ecologist, I've been aware of the climate change for many years, almost since high school, 40 years. And it just seems so key to me that we look at this and turn things around so we stop burning all the fossil fuels, we stop contributing to greenhouse gases. So it just seemed like a natural thing to want to preserve the earth that we're on. I'm very much into animals and fishes, and that's where I work. And when you see all the natural systems changing in reaction to the way the planet's warming and the way the precipitation is changing, and you watch that over your lifetime, there's no doubt this is happening, but you see it in a real context of the way you live. So to me, it's just natural to want to preserve the earth and the animals and all that on it.
Would you say that we are actually in danger of that planet? So I mean, the whole topic about today's discussion is about, we're actually endangering our own self. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, based on how we were in the last, 20 years or so, how do you feel that humans have kind of, adapted to the threat that we face? Like, how we kind of improving, or are we kind of like stepping back? Like, what are your thoughts on that so far, based on what you've seen in your field and what you see in the news so far?
Well, we're a difficult species. We're not getting to it, and we don't recognize intimate threats that are distances away. You look at the sacrifices people made during the Second World War, for instance. They melted down their pots and pans for ammunition to help win the war effort. We don't want to do anything right now that at least bit inconvenient to help us solve this problem with climate change. I don't know how well that answers your question there, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That leads to my next question, though. So currently, there seems to be an increase in the frequency of natural disasters such as wildfires, floods, hurricanes, droughts, earthquakes. There's so much more that keeps happening. In fact, I mean, I'm not sure if this is related to climate change, but there was an earthquake with a magnitude of, I believe, 7.1 in Guerrero, Mexico last night, I believe. So what does this all mean with respect to climate change, the effect of global warming? Are they related? Are they linked? So what are your thoughts on that? But just so many things that are happening in the world right now.
Well, there are a lot of natural disasters, and they do seem to be getting worse. Ones that are the planet's crust, such as earthquakes, you wouldn't attribute those to climate change. But certainly the wildfires, the hurricanes, the heavy weather is part of that. The big systems are a worry, but people got to remember that climate change isn't just the temperature. The biggest part of climate change is precipitation pattern changes and lack of precipitation as it moves around, and it's going to cause some great desert areas. I'm quite worried about our Midwest, where we grow all of our grain, because that's going to become drier and drier. Alberta almost has the perfect storm of things. They're going from wildfires to massive floods on a yearly basis. Handwriting's on the wall there. Yeah. So yeah, these things are concerning to see them coming along. What happens with humans is they're not happening quick enough for us to actually say, aha, there's a smoking gun. There's a reason why this is happening. It's just we don't think that way. We think in terms of very small periods. And I have to say, our political system, as great as it is also thinking in terms of very small periods. A 4-year mandate is not long enough to get a whole lot done. And if you change the thrust of your governments every 4 years, as we seem to be doing lately, you really have trouble getting momentum for the to get things accomplished.
Right. No, that's a fantastic point. So one of the things that you talked about is agriculture, right? So what does that mean for agriculture? So for example, Canada relies on imports and exports in South America, other parts of the world. So what does that mean to that? So if they are affected, and they are developing nations, so what does that mean for Canadians in a sense of are we going to struggle to find food, and are we going to change the way we do things? Are we going to make our own farming and things that are happening? What are your thoughts on that with respect to agriculture and how things are going to change as a result of changing evolution of moving pieces as a result of global warming and climate change?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you need rain, you need the right climate to grow your crops, and as things change, you need water as well. Obviously, you're seeing what's happening in California with the droughts there. We get a tremendous amount of our food from California, and they're having trouble growing it, and they're draining down all the water they have to sustain that. So, yeah, that's very important. Here in North America, our lifestyle is made possible by the amount of food we're able to grow cheaply. That enabled us to spend some of our money on what we call smaller items that we like to buy, consumer items. So we don't spend too much time paying and growing our food. We have farmers that grow massive fields of food. If that changes, then there'll be less of everything for everyone.
Do you think that, as Canadians, are we expected to do more of our own farming as a result of things that are happening? So what I'm seeing is, places like South America, so if the global warming and the climate change is shifting things up north, does that mean that we will have conditions, we'll have, longer summers and shorter winters perhaps, so it'll allow us to actually grow the plants and foods and vegetables that we need, or am I completely off base here?
No, that's a good point. There are some areas that will become better, believe it or not. And I think for a large part, Russia's thinking that way, and I think that maybe why Russia is not particularly interested in climate change. They're a pretty cold country, and they probably wouldn't mind it warming up. But there's a lot of, it's not just as simple as that. You can't just change one thing and get a benefit from it, and it's across the board. But I think we're being encouraged a lot to grow our own foods, even if it's just backyard gardens. I think that's a wonderful thing to do, no matter what you believe, or that's a nice thing to do. But certainly, food security is a huge issue.
I think one of the things that as Canadians in Canada do well is we do a lot of gardening, and folks, we do have a short summer. But I think as people really maximize on that, so growing their own plants and crops and spices and things like that. So it is a stepping stone. But my concern is more about what happens to the countries that are being affected, right? So some of these places, they prime on agriculture and farming and things like that. So what is the status of these countries, and how are they going to survive the climate change and its effects on these specific places? If they can't grow crops, what can they do? What's the fate of those people and the communities that we are reliant on?
Yes. From what I know about agriculture, if your land floods with salt water, it's not going to be able to grow very much. So the countries that have a lot of low-lying lands, and there's a lot of shows on television showing the areas that will flood, and most of the human population is along the coastlines and in the river deltas. That's where the good land is for growing food. That's why they're there. And so if those areas flood first with ocean waters rising, and ocean water rises not only because the glaciers melt, but as water warms up, it expands. So so we are seeing the oceans going up. There's no doubt about that. So if these areas flood, people simply won't be able to grow food in those places. So the answer, what we do about that, we'd be best to avoid that and not have to answer that question.
Yes. No, I mean, we'll get into that a little bit later, what can people do now, but that is something that everybody should be cautious about, because it's very serious. It's very serious. And going to my next question is, scientists have been talking about this topic for a number of years now. Like Jimmy Carter, who was the 39th president of the US, he installed, solar panels in the White House. Al Gore's movie in the 2000s Times, David Attenborough in 2020. So all these folks have been kind of preaching about the same topic over the number of years. So in your opinion, like, is this a man-made phenomena? Is this real? Or are we just living in a myth? Like, what is your thoughts on all of this? Because we are having political leaders, we have businessmen, and there's so much more, people like yourself who are self-aware and are bringing these topics forward. So what are your thoughts on this? Is this a man-made phenomenon?
Yes, I think for the most part it is. There are natural things that happen in the world, volcanoes and such, but the way I try to explain to people who don't even have to know about science is you have to understand how long it took for the Earth and the Sun to sequester all this carbon into the Earth's crust. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of years, which is beyond our comprehension, but all those millions of years, the sun shining on the Earth, the plants through the miracle of photosynthesis, taking that energy and turning it into carbon, and then that going into the Earth and being stored. So it takes hundreds of millions of years to store that up. How could you think we could dig it up and burn it in 200 years and not cause a massive effect? I don't think you have to even be a scientist. You just have to simply look at that point and say, yeah, of course we're going to affect everything. There's lots of information on it through the ice core samples and things. They know what carbon levels were in previous centuries and in eons. And we're approaching areas that were only during dinosaur ages and extremely warm periods of the Earth.
No, absolutely. So I think you touched on a little bit about, carbon and things like that too. So I know, like, we are kind of diverging on different topics. So what do you think about, carbon taxes? Because that's something that we have been taken up as part of, Doug Ford, who's the Premier of Ontario. He did remove them when he came into election. So what are your thoughts on, carbon taxes? Because this is all kind of interlinked in one way or form.
Well, I think it's a very badly named program, and I think he named it a carbon tax. I don't think the Liberals who brought it in called it a tax. It's not actually a tax, it's a redistribution of money. So what it does, it taxes you at the gas pump. I think it was a nickel at the time for a liter, and then at the end of the year you get a rebate back. And because Doug Ford took away the carbon tax that the Liberal government in Ontario had put in, federal government came in and did that, so you got a rebate back through your income tax to compensate you for the money you paid at the gas pump. If you use less gas at the gas pump, you actually made some money with it. And I think that's the incentive of these programs, is to help people financially to get on board and use less carbon and have a dollar in it for them, because that does seem to be what motivates people the most, is if they can save a little bit of money on this. These programs also help pay for new windows in schools that were insulated, for better air conditioning systems, for helping build charging stations for the electric cars. That's a real problem. I want an electric car. Where am I going to charge it? Well, nobody's going to build a charging station unless there's enough cars to charge at it. So it's quite a circle. So government needed to step in and help with these things, as they did back in the days with the gasoline engines. They did the same thing, and they needed to do that. And that money from the carbon programs is what that's supposed to go to. And it does get quite expensive in later years as we switch over. But most of the people who have electric cars will do very well with that. They'll have money in their pockets. And that's what they're trying to do. Don't forget, switching over to electric cars and all of that, there's a huge amount of jobs in that. And I'd like to speak about that for one more moment.
Yeah.
When they first invented cars, there was a lot of people that had horse businesses. They made saddles. They fed the horses. They had liveries to keep them overnight. They had all these things, and those jobs disappeared very quickly as cars came along. So it's not the first time that the better technology has caused a change in employment. There's a saying: we didn't leave the Stone Age because we ran out of stones. Because there's a better way. And I think we're on the verge of that. But we can't be afraid of the jobs we're losing. A lot of those jobs aren't that great. Digging up rocks in the bottom of a shaft like coal, that can't be a great job. So as long as there's jobs for people, I think that we have something here.
Absolutely. No, a lot of great topics. So one of the next questions I will have after the break is actually regarding technology as well. So we're going to take a quick commercial break as we continue deeper into this conversation with Larry Wickett. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
पाकिस्तान का सबसे मशहूर एक्स्ट्रा लॉन्ग ग्रेन मुगल बासमती राइस अवेलेबल इन बोथ व्हाइट एंड सिला. Home delivery is available subject to minimum order and radius. Also available at your neighborhood fresh co. मजीद मालूमात के लिए आज ही कांटेक्ट करें 5146630480 पर या ऑर्डर करें हमारे फेसबुक से. बनाएं ये रमजान और भी खास. मुगल बासमती के साथ द प्रीमियम चॉइस फॉर प्रीमियम टेस्ट।
पूरे ऑन्टेरियो में लाखों लोग अपनी कोविड-19 की वैक्सीन हासिल कर चुके हैं। हेल्थ कनाडा की मंजूरशुदा तमाम वैक्सीन महफूज और अस्पतालों, डॉक्टर्स के दफातर, फार्मेसीज और अवामी वैक्सीनेशन के मुकामात पर हासिल हैं। अपना किरदार अदा करें, अपनी वैक्सीन हासिल करें। 300 जुबानों में मदद के लिए ontario.ca/book वैक्सीन पर जाएं या 1-888-999-6488 पर कॉल करें।
Canada's Conservatives will secure the future for Milton. From Milton's small business and entrepreneurial sector to manufacturing, our plan will get Milton's economy back on track. We will restore accountability and trust in government, address the mental health epidemic, ensure we're ready for the next health crisis, and get Canada's fiscal house in order. I'm thrilled to work with your Conservative candidate, Nadeem Akbar. Nadeem has 17 years of experience as an IT professional. He's passionate about giving back to the community. Now he's ready to be your next Member of Parliament. Nadeem is ready to serve the people of Milton.
Hello Milton, my name is Nadeem Akbar. I'm your Conservative candidate. To connect with me, check out my website, nadeemakbar.ca.
2020 का लाजवाब ऑफर, जहां हम 0% फाइनेंसिंग पर आपकी मनपसंद कार दे रहे हैं, फ्री विंटर टायर्स, और साथ ही हम मुफ्त ऑयल चेंज भी दे रहे हैं, वो भी उम्र भर के लिए। अभी आएं और इस लाजवाब ऑफर का लुत्फ लें। जल्दी करें, आपका खुशामदीद हमारे आउटलेट में, जो कि 60 क्वींस प्लेट ड्राइव at intersection close to Highway 27 and Rexdale opposite to Woodbine Racetrack। जल्द से जल्द इस ऑफर का लुत्फ लें। आज ही कॉल करें सुनील अग्रवाल को 647-703-0218।
Thanks, everybody. So we are here with Larry Wickett. We are talking about climate change and imminent threats and the future. So before the break, we talked a little bit about what is the threat that we're talking about, and now let's talk a little bit about technology, because we touched on that a little bit before the break. So one of the questions that I had prepared is what are your thoughts on the development of technology in the past years? Because as more and more things that are happening to the planet, we're using different types of resources, different types of ways to solve the problem. So are we actually stepping in the right way with respect to climate change? Because right now, if you think about products such as Apple or any of those companies, right, they are using reusable products and like this and that. So with respect to technology, one of the things is electric cars. What are your thoughts? Like, are we headed in the right direction, or are we still not as well as we should have?
Well, we could keep going a lot more. I'm very surprised how smart we are that we haven't solved this a long time ago. And I can only think it's because the certain industries, the oil industry in particular, just don't want to give up yet. They've got lots of oil to dig up and sell, and they just don't want to let it go. And the governments are supporting them because they get revenues out of that. And that's understandable. That's how the world works. But at the same time, it's left to guys like Elon Musk to pay for the technology himself. And that's not really right. He should get some assistance from the government, the same as the oil companies get, to develop the technology. So, yeah, I think we are brilliant enough to do this. I don't think I would want to wait and hope we come up with a machine that will suck all the carbon out of the atmosphere and save us like at the 11th hour. Yeah. Although I'm surprised they can't do that. I don't know why they can't, but apparently they can. Yeah. But I think technology is going to help a lot. But we have to be able to build that, and that's where the jobs come and the switch over, and that's important.
Absolutely. No, I see, if you are watching this and you are into the technology space, these are definitely things we should be thinking about is this something that we can do to help the planet? So I want to go back to, this is something that I'm sure most of the viewers have seen. It's going back to Al Gore's documentary called The Inconvenient Truth, where he really talks about, how humans have really messed up the planet. He talks about warning signs that must be done and what needs to be done quickly to actually save the earth, which is the discussion of today's topic. So have humans listened to the calling in the last, since that movie came out? Are we on the right track, or what are your thoughts on that so far? Because I believe that movie came out in early 2000s.
Yes,
but
it
now
did. Right
yeah.
after he didn't get to be president,
That's right.
which was devastating for the earth. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
because what we did get was a government in the United States that went back into the Middle East and fought wars for oil. And I believe Al Gore, who was very much environmentalist his entire career, would have moved us at that time into renewable energies and less dependence on oil, avoided those wars, and spent all that money and those resources on helping our planet and creating jobs that way. So that's not a small point. That is one of the turning points in human history, will be his lack of not being able to be president at that time. Yes, his movie is 20 years old already. It's unbelievable, and yet it still holds the same truths because we haven't moved very far forward on it. There's a couple of points that I really liked in his movie. One was he's doing a talk about making lots of money, and he talks about gold bars and then having a nice comfortable home. And he's standing there going, well, boy, it's nice to sit at home, but I really like these gold bars. They're shiny. I'd really like to have some of those gold bars.
Right.
But I need to planet to live on. And acting like it's a question, money versus this. And it's sort of humorous. It gives a little bit of humor to the movie. The other part of it that's subtle that a lot of people don't pick up on is he very quietly talks about his sister who died of lung cancer. His whole family grew up growing tobacco. His father was a tobacco grower, and Al Gore grew up harvesting the tobacco. He calls it one of their rites of birth, where that's what the family business was. You look forward to August and September to go and bring in the crop. It was a wonderful part of their family life. To make a long story short, when his sister died of lung cancer, he said, my dad never grew tobacco again. So you see what I'm saying with that, or what he's saying with that, is that even though it's something you love doing, you've always done it, it's a wonderful tradition in your life, it's harmful. And so we have to stop that. As painful that may be, that's called a sacrifice.
Right.
That's what we do for future generations, is we sacrifice the same as they did during periods of bad times when people come together. So that's why his movie is good, because there's a number of different parts in it that you can relate to, that you get something from.
What about some of the potential negative aspects of that movie too? So I know, every movie has the critics that are positive and negative, and some people are still in denial, and they're like, oh, this is not worth their time, things like that. So what do you have to say to our viewers that have this mindset of this movie has nothing relevance to what we actually are? Any comments on that?
I don't know why they think that. I mean, I don't know what's going on today as we sit here with people think they know more than scientists. All of a sudden we become geniuses. We know more than anybody else. We know more than our doctor, more than our scientists, more than our prime ministers. We know more than everybody.
Right.
And I think it's just silly. I relish the idea of somebody smarter than me running things. I love my doctor being smarter than me and helping me with my health. I don't question that. I don't understand the mentality today where we're not listening to that. He simply lays out a case for climate change that's very compelling. It's not a matter of believing in something. Science is science. It's not a religion. It's a science. And so you debate it, and you look for the truth. Scientists sometimes get knocked because they change their minds. That's because the science gets better. They learn new things, and they're the first to admit, yeah, that wasn't exactly right. Here's what we've found out now, and they keep moving forward. But the vast percentage of all the scientists, climate scientists, all scientists, agree that climate change is happening, it's human-induced, and is becoming very serious. There's international committees on this. The world organizations are in on it. There's a lot better credibility in people who are talking about climate change than the few denying people that it still exists. They're fringe at best.
Right, absolutely. So another person that I wanted to bring up is I found out about this particular movie from a friend recently. So this is related to David Attenborough's latest movie, is Life of Our Planet. I'm not sure if people have seen this, but it's a very amazing visual of what actually the planet is going through. I was watching a bit of it before I came here, and I'm just like, whoa, this is interesting. What are your thoughts on that and his message to the audience? Because I think he filmed this movie when he was in his 90s. He's 90-something years old.
He's a treasure to us all.
Right.
Certainly the way they can film now helps us visualize things better. But his voice, his mannerisms, he just seems like Grandpa, and he's trying to help. And he's done that his whole life. He's wonderful. That movie is excellent. I don't think I need to talk about it. If you watch that movie, you don't understand what he's talking about. You're not going to get it. Yeah. We have a Canadian treasure, David Suzuki. who has done the nature of things for many, many years. Very dedicated man, has a wonderful foundation, but he's spent his entire life as well trying to help people through understanding science and nature, and these people, their shows will live forever. I find them very entertaining. They don't beat you over the head with the message, but the message is there, and it's well presented.
Very well presented.
I don't see anybody in the disputing side of this presenting any kind of movies that are anywhere as entertaining or intelligent as that. They're just angry people that think they're being hoodwinked for some reason. It's not where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think the whole industry of film and everything is changed quite a bit as well. So it allows us to show the storytelling has changed quite a bit as well too. And I think we have technology and things to actually help with that. So I think, hopefully, fingers crossed, the message is actually going through our viewers as well as the planet as well.
Well, you know, when I was in high school, we were still looking at film strips. I don't know if you know what that is, but and you turn it.
Yep.
And then I look now at the computerization of the things that they're showing, how the planets form, all these things. The visualization is so amazing. How could you not get? It's inspiring. You truly understand it.
Right.
The visualness of it is just astounding. Yeah. So I think we are smart in a lot of ways. But you know, you got to be smart for the people that made that and found those things out and are presenting them to you. They're the teachers.
I know, like I completely get it. So even myself, when I was growing up, you know, we had floppy disks and films, cassettes, DVDs, Blu-rays. Now it's all digital, online. Who knows where it can get to? Yeah. But the thing is, what really impresses me is that footage and things. Even in David's video, he shows some images from when he was a child and things like that too, which I think are worth keep thinking about as well. So. Relating this to nature, so talking a little bit about humanity itself. So what is humanity's impact on nature? So what happens to our economy, humanity? How do we deal with each other? So climate is one thing. But how are we going to deal with it? So for example, you know, we get cranky when it rains, or we get cranky when it's too hot. So how are we going to deal with each other? Like, are we going to be sane about these things? So what are your thoughts on that? Like, can humans actually be humane while we go through this ever-changing change of the planet while we go through this?
Well, if you have food and a shelter, you'll be happier. Yeah, that's a little facetious, but it's kind of it is difficult. To know how we will react to all of this. Yeah, what's the question again?
It's okay, no problem. What happens to our economy and humanity?
So what you know, we need to understand also that like human impact on the planet in general it goes much further than climate change. I mean, the adding carbon to the atmosphere is causing a carbonization of the oceans, which is a carbonic acid, which makes it hard for all the creatures that grow shells, and we eat a lot of those things.
Right.
And they're part of the food chain, which everything else eats. The corals are bleaching. You've probably heard about that. You know, there's Australia with these gorgeous coral barrier reef dying, and they're mining coal still. So how do you reconcile that in your country where your greatest tourism is going to be knocked off by an age-old custom of digging up rocks out of the earth and burning them? So there's that. Species are becoming extinct at an alarming rate. In fact, they're calling this the 6th great extinction. I have read about this. There's been a number of extinctions through history of the Earth. Some were caused by asteroids, very big, quick ones. Other ones were much longer ones. We're a pretty quick one as far as time goes, but not because of an asteroid, because we're changing the Earth's habitats so quickly. Partly because there's so many of us. That's a big part of it. There's just so many of us, and we just need more land, and we're just that way, where we go out and develop things. So it's a problem that goes across everything. But the number one thing is to make sure that we have rain and a stable climate, because you can't do anything if you don't have those. We're going to just be fighting just to stay alive.
Right.
And you know, it's too bad everybody doesn't. No, it's not very nice, but everybody doesn't get through a hurricane or a tornado to appreciate what real nature looks like.
Right.
It's kind of, I think people enjoy watching it on television, and it's very entertaining. They're glued to it. It's a Category 5. It's a Category 6. They're almost cheering for it to become a bigger hurricane. Live through one of those and feel the terror. And maybe you might be more cognizant of what's going to come.
No, that's 100%. Because, you know, there's movies that have not done so great, like movies like, you know, 2012, I believe.
Yeah.
That was over the top.
Very entertaining.
Very entertaining, but it's like, that's not how it really works.
Well, he was very lucky. He did well.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was I was so excited for this movie, the effects and everything.
Oh, it's a
but
great
then-
movie. Yeah, it was a great, good
Right,
movie.
but it's like exactly what you said. People don't really understand what it really feels like to go through
No.
something like this. So, for
No,
example,
you do
Haiti, the
not.
hurricanes,
You do not.
the bushfires, and the firefighters, all these kind of things. A message for them is you don't know until you actually experience it, right? Like, I'm sure.
Terror is a real thing.
Yes.
And I don't mean terror in just in general, just being really scared for your life, for whatever reasons. And
Right,
there's many
right,
reasons.
yeah.
But when it's nature coming and there's no way to comprehend what that's going to do, anyways, I don't wish that on people. I really don't. But this is where I've often said, people would defend their grandchildren with their bare hands if they thought somebody was going to threaten them. They would fight to the death for their children. And yet they don't see this as a problem, and they don't care. They're not changing the least little thing to protect their children. And I think it's a horrible tragedy, and I really think our grandchildren will look badly on us for what we're doing to them. I think that will be the generation that will finally know that, boy, these guys let us down big time if we don't really change it quickly and get going.
We'll definitely touch on this in a little while, because one of the things I wanted to talk about is our education system and how can we better educate our people. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I wanted to ask something about animals, right? So right now, we have people that are eating meat, and we have people that are vegetarian. So we have a bunch of people like that. So what are your thoughts on that? So do we need to kind of cut down on our animal intake? Do we need to find alternatives of protein?
Yes.
So because I feel like we are destroying the world by eating animals and things like that as well.
Again, there's just so many of us.
Right.
And the way we grow food here in North America, we have so much grain, so much water goes into a pound of red meat, and it's not right. It should be quite expensive and a real treat that you have a couple of times a year with a very special thing. It shouldn't be a Tuesday night dinner. I know farmers won't like hearing that, and I'm sorry for that, but the resources of the earth are so finite that that amount of processing growing meats is going to become more and more difficult. At the same time, if we could harvest more out of the oceans, that would be good, but they're already tapped right out. I'm afraid we're going to be stuck with eating jellyfish if we keep it up. And I know some people do, and they're probably not too bad, but I don't want that to become the staple. So food security is absolutely essential. That's number one. Water, we have to drink, and we have to have food. So we're just using a lot of it. So we do have to find ways. We pretty much use technology to get the most we can out of a piece of land right now. We've done well with that. Fertilizers and the way we irrigate, we're getting, and the machinery, the way we're farming, we're getting a lot of food production. That's what's allowed the Earth's population to become into the billions like it has, is that ability to grow lots of food here, and we share whatever we have with the rest of the planet. But we're counting on a lot everything going just right. And don't forget, there's a lot of petrochemicals going into doing that too.
Absolutely.
The energy that we harness to do that is exactly what we're talking about, from the sun's energy millions of years ago, and we're releasing it now. So we're using up. We call that environmental capital. We're using up our environmental capital very quickly, and we're really not putting any back in the bank for the kids.
Absolutely. No, I completely understand. So I think people are starting to take a different take on meat as well too. So there are things like Beyond Meat and a bunch of other things that are coming up, which are more plant-based and a little bit more better for the environment.
I think that's a great idea.
So hopefully people are looking into this.
That's pretty good too. It's come a long way. It's come a really long way.
A lot more options in the fast food chains, a lot more options in the grocery stores, and just restaurants in general.
And that's the private sector making jobs. And that's exactly what 100%. We need, that kind of technology, that kind of ingenuity, that investment in the future through capitalization, because that's what people like. People like to make money and to have a job and buy things. And if that's the kind of jobs we want to start to develop.
Right. So that was amazing. So stay with us, folks. We're going into a short commercial break, and we'll talk about what can we do now and what have we been doing that things need to change. So we'll be right back, folks, after this commercial break.
पूरे ओंटारियो में लाखों लोगों ने अपना कोविड-19 टीका लगवाया है। स्वास्थ्य कनाडा द्वारा अनुमोदित सभी टीके सुरक्षित हैं और अस्पतालों, डॉक्टरों के कार्यालयों, फार्मेसियों और सामूहिक टीकाकरण स्थलों में उपलब्ध हैं। अपनी भूमिका निभाएं, अपना टीका लगवाएं। वेबसाइट ontario.ca/book vaccine पर जाएं या 300 भाषाओं में सहायता के लिए 1-888-999-6488 पर कॉल करें।
Canada's Conservatives will secure the future for Milton. From Milton's small business and entrepreneurial sector to manufacturing, Our plan will get Milton's economy back on track. We will restore accountability and trust in government, address the mental health epidemic, ensure we're ready for the next health crisis, and get Canada's fiscal house in order. I'm thrilled to work with your Conservative candidate, Nadeem Akbar. Nadeem has 17 years of experience as an IT professional. He's passionate about giving back to the community. Now he's ready to be your next Member of Parliament. Nadeem is ready to serve the people of Milton.
Hello, Milton. My name is Nadeem Akbar. I'm your Conservative candidate. To connect with me, check out my website, nadeemakbar.ca.
पाकिस्तान का सबसे मशहूर एक्स्ट्रा लॉन्ग ग्रेन मुगल बासमती राइस अवेलेबल इन बोथ व्हाइट एंड सिलैब. होम डिलीवरी इज अवेलेबल सब्जेक्ट टू मिनिमम ऑर्डर एंड रेडियस. ऑल्सो अवेलेबल एट योर नेबरहुड फ्रेश कोड. मजीद मालूमात के लिए आज ही कॉन्टैक्ट करें 5146630480 पर या ऑर्डर करें हमारे फेसबुक से. बनाए ये रमजान और भी खास मुगल बासमती के साथ. द प्रीमियम चॉइस फॉर प्रीमियम टेस्ट. – 2020 का लाजवाब ऑफर जहां हम 0% फाइनेंसिंग पर आपकी मनपसंद कार दे रहे हैं, फ्री विंटर टायर्स और साथ ही हम मुफ्त ऑयल चेंज भी दे रहे हैं, वो भी उम्र भर के लिए. अभी आएं और इस लाजवाब ऑफर का लुत्फ लें. जल्दी करें, आपका खुशामदीद हमारे आउटलेट में जो कि 60 क्वींस प्लेट ड्राइव एट इंटरसेक्शन क्लोज टू हाईवे 27 एंड रेक्सडेल अपोजिट टू वुडबाइन रेस ट्रैक. जल्द से जल्द इस ऑफर का लुत्फ लें. आज ही कॉल करें सुनील अग्रवाल को 647-703-0218. देखिए खेल की आवाज हर पीर शाम 7 बजे. आज की बात समीना जबीन के साथ हर मंगल रात 8 बजे. इस्लाम इन मॉडर्न टाइम हर मंगल और जुमा शाम 6 बजे. कैनेडियन मोज़ेक हर बुध रात 8 बजे. रियलिटी कॉफी टॉक हर जुमेरात शाम 7 बजे. टुनाइट टॉक हर जुमा शाम 7 बजे. देखिए तकरार, कीजिए तकरार समीना जबीन के साथ हर रोज रात 9 बजे और रिपीट सुबह 9 बजे. आप देख रहे हैं आवाज एंटरटेनमेंट. आवाज आपकी, चैनल हमारा. जुड़िए हमसे.
Welcome back, everybody. So we are here with Larry Wickett talking about climate change and the imminent threats of the current, the past, as well as the future itself. So before the break, we talked a little bit about technology and how its impact on climate change. So let's kind of go a little bit deeper on that as well. So one of the questions that I had was, what are your thoughts on some of the new technology that's coming out, right? So one thing we talked about a little bit is Tesla, renewable energy, and all these kind of things. How does that support the industry of are we actually going through the right direction by switching over to electric cars and the way that the manufacturers are happening and things like that as well?
Yeah, that's the actual nuts and bolts of how the technology will work is not my greatest area of knowledge. But I do know that when anything starts up, there's startup costs and there's growing pains. So well, it may cost a lot and even be environmentally damaging to start up a plant to make the batteries or things like that. Once you're underway and you're mass producing them and all those initial damages and costs and things are done, then that reduces exponentially. It was exactly the same for the oil industry. They're poking mines. I mean, compared to the extraction of oil and gases, the damage done there just in the extraction, never mind burning them, exceeds any of that anyways. But it is a cleaner technology, and it's bound to be better. Even if it costs you initially to build a solar panel, the life of the solar panel, the cleanness of the energy it produces will far exceed any damage initially that's caused.
Yeah. And I think so. What about emerging technologies that are coming out? So one thing is bitcoins and how they're utilized in different fields and forms. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're not asking me to explain how it works because I've never heard anybody do that yet.
Oh gosh,
I'm
that's
sure
that's way too painful. Like I know that'll be like an entire hour on its own. Maybe we'll dedicate some of that in a later episode.
It does seem to go up a lot all the time. So people like that it goes up in value all the time.
Yeah,
I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
But what I've heard about Bitcoin, I'm not an expert on Bitcoin either, but it uses an absolutely astronomical amount of energy to produce this stuff or mine it or whatever the term is. Seems like a strange term to me, mining it. They're not mining it, anyways, whatever. That's what they call it. So they're trying to find ways to get cheaper energy to do this. And what I've heard is that out in Alberta has actually sold Bitcoin some of their coal plants that they mothballed for climate change, because Bitcoin doesn't want to pay going rates for their energy. So they're actually going to own the energy source, and they're going to start to burn coal again to reduce that. Well, I just think that's crazy that we've come to a part in our society where we're going to have electronic currency, but we're going to burn big black rocks out of the earth to run it. That just astounds me that we could do something like that. I'm all for Bitcoin for what I know about it, but why can't it be renewable energy? So it's the same with your car. What's the sense in having an electric car if you're burning coal to charge it up? That makes no sense. That's not what the environmentalists are saying at all. We have to have renewable energy sources, and from that all things are possible. But that's the first step. I thought our previous government here in Ontario did a great job of getting rid of coal as they promised, and yes, we had to use natural gas to stopgap it, and natural gas is not 100% perfect, but it's better than coal. And they did a good job of moving us that way, and we were equated with places like California, some of the best places in the world for our positions in reducing carbon here. So we had done a really good job. And then the carbon pricing was also part of that. So we changed governments, we've rolled that back. And I have to say to the people, Doug Ford didn't do that by secret. He told you exactly what he was going to do. Is I'm going to get rid of the carbon tax. And people said, yes, that's what we want. So I find that very scary because I'm not sure they understand what that really meant. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. I think that was a completely wrong thing, but at least he did what he said he would. I'll give him that.
No, that's for sure. So what are your thoughts on the parties that are running at the moment? Because we are in the modes of elections. So some parties are slightly more favored with the mandate of focusing on the environment more, and some are not. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, what should the government and just the people should think about when they are going into this elections phase?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to swayed people under political parties. People take that very personally. I find that some people will not change their political party no matter what. They just, that's what they are, and they always been that way. It's a very kind of Americanized way of thinking. I will say that Margaret Atwood, famous Canadian writer, in a recent interview said that she's voted for 4 different political parties in her life. Because she doesn't just look at the leader, she looks at the policies of the party, and she's found things that she liked and thought were important in all 4 parties in her lifetime. And I think that's exactly what the voters should look at, is what are the policies of the party. The leader can be good or not good, some are terrible, some are, as we've seen in other places, and some are quite good. But it's the position of the party going day to day. I'd have to say we have our last government, Liberal government, was handed a pretty tough shot with Mr. Trump down in the United States. I think they expected to get a Democratic government that after Barack Obama, who was very pro-climate, very pro-moving into new technologies and doing these things, and that's what the Liberals campaigned on, and they won on that. And I think they had full intention. Catherine McKenna was wonderful. I think they had full intentions of doing that. But how can you do it when your southern partner is just throwing in the towel? And how do you compete in the industry? How do you do that? So they ran into a real roadblock, and I think we did well just to be able to keep our heads above water during that period. And then when that seemed to come to an end, now we're still dealing with the COVID crisis here. So they've had a tough time to judge any government by their record, I'd have to say, over the last 5 or 6 years. But there's another party that seems to want to go back to what their previous prime minister did back years and years ago, and there's nothing new there, and he didn't do much of anything. I know I'm speaking about Mr. Harper. He went up to the Arctic every summer.
Right.
He watched the Arctic melting. He saw it for himself, the Arctic melting. And climate change is much more severe in the northern climates than down here. Up there it's melting fast. Those people up there know it's happening.
Right,
He
right.
talked to them. He saw it. Yet he came back and it was the same old. So, that to me, that's what I notice when I'm looking at a party is what I can change. I'll vote whoever's the best one. But I think they need to change too and get on the topics that are
Right.
important. I know there's so many topics for people, especially in urban areas like Toronto. Housing is huge. There's so many things that are important to people. But again, I keep going back to we can talk about all these things. We need a planet to do it on.
Right,
And
right.
that's where I keep going back to.
Right. So before we wrap up the interview in the next little while, so let's focus a little bit about what can people do? Like, for example, let's say the education system. So students are back in school. Teachers are now revamping their syllabus, getting used to things. So what would you say from elementary school, high school, or even universities or colleges? What can they do to kind of raise more awareness with these things? Because there are clubs that kind of do these type of activities, kind of raise social awareness and things like that. But from the curriculum itself, our Canadian system that we have here, is there something from an environmental professional that you would suggest that we change a little bit on the educational front? And your thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, my kids are long growing. They didn't get a lot of environmental specialization through school.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to teach kids. I think they're probably doing a pretty good job. What you got to remember is being a good environmentalist goes way past just recycling.
Right.
I mean, that's good to do that. Certainly it's better than not doing it. But you can't just do that and say, now I've done my bit for the planet. We have so much more to do.
Right.
Reducing what we're using is number one. And I think we talk about that with changing our habits with meat. Reducing the amount we're using, reusing things more, and then recycling. Those are the way it goes. That's been in our school system for many, many years. Yet I have to say, I still see a lot of cups thrown along the highway. I still see the younger kids. A lot of them are not really with it, and a lot are.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably always the way it's been. Kids that are interested in it will pick up on it, explore it, move into it. Other kids are interested in other things. That's fine. We don't all have to do this at the same time. We just have to don't get in the way of the people that want to save the planet.
Right.
Just don't get in their way. Don't throw stones at them.
Right.
Okay.
That's a really good topic. That's a really good punchline that you just
Yeah.
talked about too. So don't hate the people that are actually trying to make a difference.
Yeah, we're trying to help.
Yes,
We're
yes.
not doing this to make money for ourselves either. I make nothing. This has nothing to do with my living.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just think it's important that we keep the discussion going and keep moving forward.
On that note, so let's say, for example, there's an enthusiast that's watching the show, say, hey, I love everything that we talked about. How can I get involved and get into a career in environment consulting and things like that? Do you have any advice to perhaps a younger version of yourself, or maybe your daughter, or somebody that's actually related to, that wants to do the work that you're doing? Do you have any tips or suggestions for our viewers that might be interested in this?
Well, my professional work is much more hands-on environmental work. I do construction inspections. So those are just your basic college courses, university courses, which the kids will all be aware of. But it's more. It can be more than that if yeah, no, that's the main thing. As long as they're learning about it, and that's their area of interest, and then they'll continue into that way to do it. There are a lot of different clubs around. The Org 350, which is a club out of the United States, a very good writer on climate change, has started this many years ago. That's one of them. There's so many clubs and outfits and foundations that you can join and contribute your time. It's not a money thing. I mean, they need money to run too, but that's not up to the little kids. They have big people doing that. But just your time, your support, just your membership. There is no shortage of things you can join and belong to get to know more about this and to start to work on things and make a difference. There's a ton of it.
No, absolutely. So I think a few more questions and we'll wrap it up for the day. So what can citizens of the planet, not specifically to Canada, can do today? So starting today, tonight, tomorrow,
Well,
what are the few little things
we have to really stop the nonsense. It just occurred to me while you're speaking that there's a whole club of people that believe that the Earth is flat, and they meet and they talk about it, and no, this is quite serious, and they'll argue about it.
Okay,
And
I didn't know about this.
Yeah, the Flat Earth Society, and so I just think if you're that argumentative, you're that unwilling to actually help and do something useful with your time. I don't mean to pick on them in particular, but that's about the biggest example I can think of something that's ridiculous to spend time on. Yeah. We need to stop talking BS and look at and stop making things up and hold the politicians to account. I think politicians will do exactly what we want them to do if we
Right.
tell them. But there's too many of us that are quiet, and the people that are complaining and the big money is pushing them around. But I think politicians generally would do what the voters want, but we have to make it very clear to them. So one thing every citizen can do is make it clear to their candidates that this is important, and they want the government to start to work on this. This should have long been not an issue in the election. This should be something that we're working on. All parties agree with it. It's being done across the board, the same as COVID is. You know, all parties are working on this to work on that. It's a common thread. Everybody identifies it. It shouldn't be a part of a political debate in the evening or people discussing it that way. They should already be doing this, and we're talking about a whole lot of things that we have to work on as well. So it's a shame that we're still in this place.
Yeah.
I don't know what to ask people to do except for just to keep the pressure on and try and get their politicians to, because that seems to be the way it is. Our government has to do it, and I personally support a lot of renewable energy through my investments. So I have mutual funds, things like that. I'm older. I'm getting ready for retirement. I don't own oil companies. I own renewable energy companies. And my tax guy or my investment guy said, "You need to own these oil companies." I said, "No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I believe in the future, and I'm going to go down and going down with everybody else. I want to invest in renewable energy companies." So I've done that for the most part. And so I think that's where you put your money where your mouth is. And if we can capitalize the change and create the jobs that way, I think it's very doable. But we do need to get going. We have to get it done now.
Right.
We can't leave it to our kids.
Yeah, that is true. Speaking of kids, what do you have to say for, let's say, the COVID babies and people that are just coming up right now, because they're probably so oblivious to any of these things, right? So they're just coming out, school just opened, they're just facing all these things. So a few things that I can think about personally is, recycling. Being able to recycle things, using products and things that are not like animal fur, these kind of things that I can think of, that kids needs to be educated for these things, right? Because we don't need to kill animals unnecessarily. We don't need to throw out trash in the ocean. Like these kind of small things that I think are really important, which I think teachers, parents, and just the people around us should be educating them. But if you had to, let's say, like your daughter was born like the last year or something, how would you have to?
I feel so from parents with young kids. I feel so stressed for them. It must be. It's just absolutely so hard, and they're so scared for them. And the kids are not having the good life that we had a few years ago. It's been hard for them. I'm sure it'll come back around. But that. I don't know. I really don't know what to say about that. Just keep educating them. I mean, I see some of these crazy rallies you're seeing on television. People have their kids at those. So again, it just depends who you are and what. And so it's up to the parents and the schools. They say a community grows a child. So
I think the beauty here is that you need to be more self-aware. The parents need to be more aware of these kind of things before they're putting themselves in there, because I think our future of kids is important. So if your parents are like doing this, this is what you believe in. For example, the world is flat. That's kind of going long term, like they're going to believe that.
But you're not helping your child into the future with that. And in this case, the parents that aren't taking this serious on behalf of their children, it would be strange if the children actually swayed the parents to change. But I've heard of that happening. They've made their parents more aware through the schooling systems, that they've come home and showed their parents a few things, and they started looking into it. And really good parents that really love their kids are saying, I want you to have a good life like I had. I want you to be able to have babies, and they have the bright future that I hoped you had when I had you. And I honestly believe we're taking that from them. And Greta there from, oh God, where's she from?
No problem.
She's Sweden, I think. She's very good, and she's very inspiring. I wish we'd see more of her, but it's very tiring for people to keep doing that. A girl like her going around, and it's a lot of it's not friendly. So it's hard, and she doesn't get paid for that. So.
Absolutely. So we are wrapping up the show. So thank you so much, Larry. So this was such a informative and like educational conversation. So I learned a lot. and I'm sure the viewers have learned a lot as well too. So for the folks that are listening in, this is Larry Wickett. He's from Toronto, Canada, and we just heard so much about climate change and the threats and the future. There's so much content in here. So we hope that the viewers, you found this very useful and educational. So this is your host Prashanth, and this is Canadian Mosaic as part of Awaz Entertainment. Please follow, subscribe to us on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time on next Wednesday, same time. Have a great rest of the day.
Right.